Hello ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, dogs, and cats, and welcome back to Calm Down Level Up. Today we are here again in the Middle East, actually. We're not in Europe this time. Every single battle we've done, I guess except for the Caucasus free-for-all, unless you even want to consider that Europe. The first time we've done a battle outside of Europe, and I have a few planned, a few more for outside of Europe planned. But today we are doing Iran versus Saudi Arabia for Iraq and Kuwait. Now I've merged Iraq and Kuwait into just Iraq. I know, Saddam Hussein, a wet dream here. Just so that they could both fight and we don't have to use, like, Paraguay this time. We can just use Iraq itself. Now, this one should be pretty interesting because these two countries, in real life, have a huge rivalry. I'm not sure if you guys know much about it, but there is a insane minor Cold War going on in the Middle East between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and it's really cool to learn about. So, if you guys are unaware of it, I would encourage you guys to go watch some videos, read up about it. It's really interesting. But anyways, I also have another video planned where I'm going to do the Syrian war, probably in Modern Day 4. Modern Day 4 is very in-depth with the Syrian Civil War, and I think I could get a lot of cool battles in that mod. But today we're back in Millennium Dawn. Let's get Iran and Saudi Arabia. Who rightfully controls this part of Arabia? Now again, I don't condone... No, sorry. Now again, I don't have any political stances here. This is just for fun. Do not take this as a serious video. Now for our first battle that we're going to do out of 3, we're just going to leave them as they are. I did delete the factions, but the world tension is not high enough for new factions to form. So it is just going to be straight up Iran versus straight up Saudi Arabia. Now really quick before we start, some pluses and minuses to each one. Iran has a much bigger army, like ridiculously larger army, but Iran is in a bigger equipment deficit, I noticed. Also, Iran is going to have to invade into desert tiles, whereas Saudi Arabia can just hold and defend with the army that they do have. So I think Iran has an edge in this first battle, but it is going to be kind of tough. But let's just find out. Alright, here we go. Again, another edge to Iran in this battle because they already have more troops on the border already. They're a little bit more ready for this war. But here comes the Saudis pretty quick. They're already mobilizing, and they've actually set up a defense line in front of their capital. Alright, the Saudis and the Persians have met for the first time. They're meeting right around the middle of Iraq, which is pretty cool. Right along this river here. Oh, also, what? Oh, I see. So, hold on a sec. So there's been a peace deal already between Iraq and Iran, although the Saudis do already occupy a lot of it. Apparently, Kuwait was puppeted, and bits of Iraq and Kurdistan were puppeted as well. Actually, the Iraqi Caliphate is not a puppet of Persia, so they've just totally screwed themselves by not letting themselves be able to move through that territory. But the Iraqi, yeah, it's already gone. The monarchist party was put in power in the Kingdom of Iraq. Now the Kingdom of Iraq has changed again, but now they have to leave Iraq again. So Iraq is just continuing to grow into a buffer state. Oh, look at this! Actually, a faction formed. The Kuwait Sultanate formed a faction with Iran, which is its puppet, so that makes sense. The Middle Eastern Union of Allah. This war could grow into a much funner and larger war to watch if more members of this actually join. But we're seeing Saudis and Iranians clash up at Mosul. This new Iraq is working as a buffer state to make the front line a lot smaller, actually. So the Saudis actually took a lot more than I thought they would. I thought that Iran would have been on their butts the whole time. Both of these guys are starting to have equipment problems, but it looks like Iran is having the worst equipment problems. As you can see, their divisions are not very equipped. Although eventually they are probably going to break past this river and take Mosul. But they are having a hard time right now. It looks like they almost just broke this province. Oh my god. So for casualties, we have 1,000 dead Saudis to 68,000 dead Iranians. Or Persians. Wow. That is very one-sided, although I do think there is still somewhat of an edge to Iran if they can break this. Actually, not puppeting Iraq here was a really good idea by the Saudis to make this front line a lot smaller because they have a lot smaller of a force. And with that smaller force, they need a smaller front line to actually man. Now, if this stalemate drags on for too long, we're probably going to call it for Saudi Arabia for the first game. Something I really did not expect to have to do. Basically, the Saudis control most of Iraq, And even though they don't directly control the new Iraqi state that was formed, it's a monarchy, and the Saudis put that monarchy in power. That's almost like the Saudis controlling Baghdad as well. And Persia's massive army should have been able to push through and take everything without having this many problems. This is Iran's equipment deficit, a negative 9,000, 10,000 roughly, jumping around there. Roughly 10,000 guns, negative 600 mechanized, and negative 1. Almost 2,000 light mechanized. They're going to be in the negatives with their tanks too at some point. Also, the Saudis have aerial superiority. We also have the Kurdish Islamic State joining the Middle Eastern Union of Allah, which is Iran's faction. That does make sense because that is one of Iran's puppets. Oh, it's gotten even worse. Still almost 2,000. Barely under 2,000 dead Saudis. 218.3 thousand dead Iranians. I've also just realized that the Saudis are going down communism, which is definitely not going to work out for them. Wow, actually Iran is too. They're both going down communism. Alrighty, well, since Iran cannot break Saudi Arabia, despite all odds pointing in Iran's favor, we are going to call it for Saudi Arabia, because they do control the majority of Iraq. They've set up their own, not puppet government, but they set up their own government that's in their favor, and Iran cannot break past them. So, Saudi Arabia 1, Iran 0. Alright guys, here we are in our second game. For our second game, I actually evened out the amount of divisions each country has, and I left the factions on. So let's see if NATO or the CSTO will actually get involved this time. Also, I've upped the world tension to 100%. Now let's get these wars going to see if they actually affect anything. Alright, so let's see if a smaller Iran force can actually defeat the equally small Saudi force instead of Iran's force being giant. That may actually be a plus because now Iran's forces aren't going to be as stretched out in supply. South Ossetia just joined the CSTO. Oh wow, so Iran took Baghdad first, but the Saudis were able to take a lot more than they did last time, and they've actually pushed into a bit of Iran in the south. Chechnya joined a faction with Iran. That's not going to put them in a good position with the CSTO, Middle Eastern Coalition of Muslims. We might see Pakistan and Afghanistan join that. That might be kind of interesting to see. But yeah, peace deal just happened with Iraq. We have Kuwait as a Saudi puppet. We also have Kurdistan as a Saudi puppet. Also forgot to mention that I gave both these guys 100,000 of their respective infantry equipment. Baghdad has just been surrounded and taken by the Saudis. Wow, Saudis doing super good this game. Romania joined NATO. Interesting. The Great Kingdom of Kurdistan just joined a faction with the Saudis, the Royal Pact. It also includes Kuwait. So this time they actually both formed their own faction, which is pretty cool. Iran making a bit of a comeback. It looked like the Saudis were absolutely going to destroy Iran very early, but the Iran forces have pushed back and are making gains, but it looks like they're just losing everything back. So the Saudis are going to win here, probably. Tehran is very close to being taken as well. Also, Tabriz is open, and the Saudis have just taken it. Oh, Tehran is also fallen, and this major city here. This is very bad for Iran. They still have a fairly major city up in the north, but at this point, Iran has lost. Iran capitulated. Rest in peace. Saudi Arabian Persia was puppeted. There's our Royal Pact, and Chechnya is left alone with its Middle Eastern Coalition of Muslims. Russia will be right on that. But let's get into a third game and see if we can get Iran to win any of the games today. Right in our final battle, we're going to be having Iran and Saudi Arabia still fight for Iraq, but Iraq's going to have its whole army. So can Saudi Arabia and Iran, first of all, defeat Iraq? Because I know they're pretty strong, and then defeat each other. Alright, here we go, boys. Saudi Arabia and Iran fighting for Iraq, but Iraq has their whole army this time. So this time Iraq is actually winning the war, as it seems. Also, Qatar joined a faction, the Saudi Arabian Commonwealth. So the Saudis are struggling with the invading Iraqi forces, but Iraq is going to eventually run out of supply. Their army is just too big, and they're fighting two fronts. Although the same thing could happen to Iran. Yeah, so Iraq has been pushed back to the original Saudi border in the north, but in the south they still hold Kuwait. Actually, they just lost Kuwait. And they've taken some Saudi land in the south. Alright, so portions of southern Iraq are starting to be taken. The Persians are actually having a harder time with Iraq, I think, than Saudi Arabia is. Even though Iraq did dive deeper into Saudi Arabia at first, the Saudis are doing a good job actually combating them, whereas Iran is basically stalemating with them really hard, having a really hard time pushing them back out. Oh, so we have first contact between Persia and the Saudis down over in Kuwait. Persia actually took over Kuwait. Will they be able to hold it, though? I don't know. And there's actually no Saudi defenders on the border here. It wouldn't really be that strategic to attack into Saudi Arabia from Kuwait for Persia, but, I mean, they can do whatever they want, I guess. Looks like Iran did take Baghdad, and it looks like a lot of the Iraqi divisions have died from probably equipment loss and attrition, and Iraq might get cut in half, Mosul in the north and just the rest in the south. Or 5 Persian divisions could get encircled and killed off just like that. Yep, 5 Persians were just killed in the desert around Baghdad. Oh, Mosul is about to fall too. Their new capital is in the middle of the desert, Al-Hajjara. Actually, they've just retaken Mosul. Oh, rest in peace. So the Kurdish Islamic State was puppeted and the Islamist Party was put in power in Iraq. So Iraq is now essentially pro-Persia. The Kurdish Islamic State joined the Middle Eastern Union of Allah, and actually if Iraq joins that too, they're going to get quite a boost. And yes, it did. So now Iraq and Persia can work together. But it looks like the Saudi forces are finally capitulating. Their army was just surrounded outside of Baghdad, and all of the Persian trucks are swarming down into the peninsula now. Actually, they made a naval landing as well into one of the Saudi ports. Dang, 6 divisions. So it looks like Persia is going to get a victory after all. And there they go. Let's check out this peace deal. Iraqi Caliphate took 3 states, and the Iraqi Arabia was puppeted. So the Iraqi Caliphate now controls this much, and Arabia is a puppet of Iraq. Anyways, boys, we're almost at 20k, so make sure you hit subscribe on your way out of this video, and please leave a like. Again, thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to leave a like, favorite, subscribe if you guys are new, and I will see you guys all next time. Peace.